Hey everyone, welcome back to Sisterhood in Surgery. It's been a very short summer break for us, but we're back with a vengeance. So today I have my co-host, Dr. Palma Shaw, and we will be talking about the early years as a surgeon mom. And I'll go ahead and introduce our first two guests. So Dr. Claudia Shahan, who actually was my original mentors in med school before I even knew what vascular surgery was. That's when I decided I wanted to go into vascular surgery. She's a professor of clinical surgery at LSU in New Orleans, and she has completed her general surgery residency at Mount Sinai in New York, after which she performed 2 years of basic science research at Harvard. She finished her training at Mount Sinai in vascular surgery fellowship, and she's been in practice at LSU since then. Her husband, Dr. Mal Shahan, who's previously been on our show, is also a vascular surgeon, and they have 3 boys. And Claudia, how old are they?
They're 9, 12, and 16.
Wow. Okay. Back then, when I was a med student, they were I don't even think you have had the third one yet. But
Right. That's right.
Yeah. So times are flown by. And then our second guest is Dr. Marie Unruh, who is a colleague of mine. She's an associate professor at LSU with Dr. Shahan. She graduated from Tulane General Surgery Residency, and then went to Houston Methodist Vascular Surgery Fellowship Program. And then she is now at LSU, where she's worked for the past 6 years. Welcome, Marie. She's a mother of an 18-month-old son, Evan, and she's pregnant with a daughter on the way. Congratulations. And
Thank
she's
you.
also, of note, a part of a dual surgeon household. Palma?
Yes.
I'd like to introduce Dr. Jana Etkin. She's an associate professor of surgery at the Zucker School of Medicine and the program director for the Vascular Surgery Fellowship and the Integrated Vascular Residency at Northwell Health. She completed general surgery training at Montefiore Medical Center and her vascular fellowship at the Hospital of University of Pennsylvania. She maintains a busy clinical practice with special expertise in aortic surgery, inferior vena cava filter retrieval, critical limb ischemia, and dialysis access. She runs an active clinical research program focused on novel vascular surgical techniques and patient outcomes, and she also just had her 3rd child. Dr. Karen Kish graduated medical school from Drexel University College of Medicine, my alma mater, and completed her general surgical residency at the Abington Memorial Hospital, followed by a fellowship in colon and rectal surgery at the University of Medicine and Dentistry in New Jersey. Currently, she's working as a breast surgeon at the Comprehensive Breast Center at Mercy Catholic Medical Center in Darby, Pennsylvania. She's been in practice there for over 5 years, overseeing the cancer program and serving as the director of that program and chair of the cancer committee. In those roles, she takes care of the program, quality improvement, research, and education, and describes her passion in breast surgery to deliver